On a quiet country estate in Suffolk, England, a wealthy landowner stared out at a series of strange, grassy mounds that had sat on her property for as long as anyone could remember. For centuries, locals had whispered that they were ancient burial mounds, perhaps for Viking kings, but most believed they were just natural hills, long since emptied by grave robbers. In the summer of 1939, on the very eve of the Second World War, the landowner, driven by a deep sense of curiosity, hired a self-taught local archaeologist to finally dig into the largest of the mounds and see what was inside. What he uncovered was not a simple grave. It was the ghostly, perfect impression of a massive, 90-foot-long ship buried in the earth for over 1,300 years. He had stumbled upon the lost tomb of an Anglo-Saxon king, and the treasures found within would completely change our understanding of the so-called Dark Ages. To understand the world of this discovery, we must first meet the two remarkable individuals at its heart. The first is the landowner, a woman named Edith Pretty. She was not a typical country lady. Edith had inherited an immense fortune, and in her youth, she had traveled the world, visiting archaeological sites in Egypt and other exotic locations. She was intelligent, curious, and had a deep interest in history and spiritualism. In the 1920s, she purchased a large, remote estate in Suffolk called Sutton Hoo. The estate was beautiful, but its most prominent feature was a group of about 18 low, mysterious, grassy mounds. Edith had long been fascinated by them, and local legends of ghostly figures seen near the mounds only deepened her intrigue. The second protagonist is the man she hired, Basil Brown. Brown was not a Cambridge-educated professor. He was a brilliant, self-taught archaeologist from a humble farming background. He had left school at the age of 12, but he had a voracious appetite for knowledge. He taught himself astronomy, geology, and archaeology, and became a renowned local expert, known for his incredible, almost instinctual ability to read the subtle language of the soil. He was a practical, patient, and deeply knowledgeable man who was often looked down upon by the formal, academic archaeological establishment. It was this unlikely partnership, the wealthy, curious spiritualist and the brilliant working-class archaeologist, that would lead to the greatest archaeological discovery in British history. The mystery they were about to unravel was rooted in one of the most obscure and misunderstood periods of English history, the Anglo-Saxon era. After the Roman Empire abandoned Britain in the early 5th century AD, the island was plunged into a period often referred to as the Dark Ages. It was a time of invasion and migration as tribes from northern Germany and Scandinavia, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes crossed the sea and established a series of new warring kingdoms. This was the era of legendary kings and epic poems like Beowulf, a time of warrior culture, pagan gods, and magnificent craftsmanship in metalwork and jewelry. But it is called the Dark Ages primarily because of the scarcity of written historical records. Without a clear history, it was long assumed to be a primitive, unsophisticated time, a step backward from the order and grandeur of the Roman world. The discovery at Sutton Hoo is about to prove just how wrong that assumption was. In the summer of 1938, Edith Pretty formally hired Basil Brown to begin excavating the mounds on her property. Brown, paid a modest salary of 30 shillings a week, began his work with a small team of assistants from the estate. He started with some of the smaller mounds. What he found was both exciting and disappointing. He found evidence of ship burials, a pagan practice where a great lord or king was buried inside a ship, surrounded by his treasures. But he also found clear evidence that these smaller mounds had been plundered centuries ago, likely by Viking-era grave robbers who had dug shafts into their centers and stolen all the valuable artifacts. Then, in the summer of 1939, with the threat of war with Germany looming over Britain, Edith instructed Basil to excavate the largest and most promising of all the mounds, a massive earthwork known simply as Mound 1. This was the one she had always been most curious about. Basil began the dig with a new and ingenious methodology. Instead of digging down from the center as the grave robbers had done, he started by cutting a trench into the side of the mound. He patiently began to peel back the layers of earth, reading the subtle changes in the soil's color and composition. He dug for days, finding nothing but sand and turf. He was beginning to fear that this mound, too, had been looted. Then he found the first clue. It was not a piece of gold or a jewel. It was a single, small, heavily rusted piece of iron. It was a rivet, a ship's rivet. He carefully cleared the sand around it and found another, and then another, all arranged in a perfect straight line. His heart began to pound. He knew what he was looking at. This was the sign of an intact ship. its wooden timbers having rotted away in the acidic soil, leaving only the iron rivets behind in their exact original positions. With the delicate touch of an artist, he and his team began to follow the lines of the rivets, carefully brushing away the sand. Slowly, painstakingly, the full, breathtaking outline of a massive vessel began to emerge. It was not a small boat, it was an ocean-going ship, 90 feet long, a ghostly, perfect impression in the sand, complete with the outlines of its hull, its keel, and even the individual planks. He was standing not in a simple grave, but in the heart of a colossal, royal, Anglo-Saxon ship burial. He had just made the discovery of a lifetime, but the central, thrilling question remained. Had the grave robbers missed this one? Was the treasure chamber at the heart of the ship still intact? The news of Basil Brown's incredible discovery, an intact Anglo-Saxon ship burial, sent shockwaves through the British archaeological community. The leading professional archaeologist from Cambridge University, who had previously shown little interest in the provincial mounds, now descended upon Sutton Hoo. In a move that remains controversial to this day, the self-taught, working-class Basil Brown was largely sidelined from the excavation of the ship's central burial chamber, the place where the treasure, if it existed, would be found. A new professional team took over. As they began the painstaking process of excavating the chamber, carefully removing the sand inch by inch, they realized that Basil Brown's intuition had been correct. The grave robbers had missed it. The treasure chamber was untouched, a time capsule sealed for over 1,300 years. What they began to unearth was the single richest treasure trove ever discovered from this period in European history. It was a dazzling and almost overwhelming collection of artifacts, a treasure that spoke of immense wealth, power, and a sophisticated warrior culture. They found a magnificent sword, its hilt and pommel decorated with intricate gold and garnet cloisonné. They uncovered a massive, ornate shield, also of stunning craftsmanship. There was a set of silver bowls and spoons from the distant Byzantine Empire, a testament to the kingdom's international trade connections. And then there was the gold, a spectacular, heavy gold belt buckle, covered in intricate animal designs. A purse lid, decorated with scenes of a man standing between two wolves, its leather pouch, long since rotted away, but still containing a collection of 37 gold coins, one from each of the major kingdoms of the Frankish Empire. And most stunning of all, a pair of massive, hinged shoulder clasps, made of solid gold and covered in thousands of tiny, hand-cut garnets and millefiori glass, a masterpiece of Anglo-Saxon goldsmithing that is unrivaled to this day. But the most iconic and most mysterious artifact was found in fragments. The team uncovered hundreds of small, rusted pieces of an iron helmet. At the time, they didn't know what it was. The pieces were carefully collected, and it would take decades of painstaking work by conservators at the British Museum to reconstruct it. What emerged was the now legendary Sutton Hoo helmet. It is an intimidating and breathtakingly beautiful piece of warrior art with a full face mask, ornate eyebrows that end in boars' heads, and scenes of warriors and dragons covering its surface. It is a helmet fit for a king. The discovery of this treasure completely rewrote the history book. It shattered the old, condescending view of the Anglo-Saxon era as a primitive and isolated dark age. The sheer quality, craftsmanship, and international origin of the artifacts prove that 7th century East Anglia was a wealthy, powerful, and highly sophisticated kingdom with far-reaching connections to Scandinavia and the Mediterranean. The art was not primitive. It was a masterclass. The culture was not isolated. It was cosmopolitan. The Sutton Hoo treasure was a burst of brilliant golden light that illuminated the so-called Dark Ages as never before. But the discovery left one profound lingering mystery. Who was buried here? The acidic soil of Sutton Hoo had completely dissolved any trace of a human body. There was no skeleton, not even a tooth. However, analysis of the soil chemistry revealed a phosphate shadow, the final, ghostly trace of a decomposed body. Based on the incredible wealth of the grave goods, historians are now almost certain that this was the tomb of a great king. The leading candidate is King Radwald of East Anglia, a powerful ruler who died around the year 624 AD, and who is one of the few Anglo-Saxon kings mentioned by name in the historical records of the time. As the team was completing their excavation in the late summer of 1939, the world outside was plunging into darkness. World War II had begun. Edith Pretty, the landowner whose curiosity had started it all, now made a decision of incredible patriotism and generosity. As the legal owner of the land, the entire priceless treasure was hers, but she knew it did not belong to her. It belonged to the nation. She chose to donate the entire collection to the British people. In a race against time, as the threat of German bombing raids grew, the priceless treasure was hastily packed up and transported to London, where it spent the entire war hidden for safety in a disused underground tube tunnel. After the war, the treasure was finally put on display at the British Museum, where it remains to this day a stunning testament to a lost age of English history. It is a story of a brilliant, self-taught archaeologist, a generous and curious landowner, and a treasure that waited silently in the earth for over a millennium to tell its incredible story.